So recently, you may all remember, we have been through the 5th K wave, which collapsed, causing headlines like this. And Bush had a face like that, Merkel looked a bit like that, and the Aussies thought they got away with it.
Enable that to happen. The reason why when I do my presentation I use a lot of videos is because I'm actually showing that the technology exists. It's not science fiction, it's science fact.
It was only 20 years ago where you went to work to use technology. You know, your office had all the latest technology. Now you have more technology at home than you have at work. You know, that whole balance has changed, and it's just going to continue.
Think about that for a minute. I just need to say out loud what I want, and an hour later it arrives. Compete with that. Who would have believed that was possible 5 years ago? And I like this quote from Elbert Hubbard, which said, "The world is moving so fast these days that anyone who said it can't be done is usually interrupted by the people who are doing it." A company that's 6 years old that makes an app is now worth more than the car you're hailing. So General Motors is worth less than Uber. Think about that for a second. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So now we have robots and 3D printers that are basically cheaper, faster, and more accurate than you. We have autonomous vehicles that are safer and cheaper than you, and we have AI and quantitative computing that is smarter than you. And that's just when they're isolated technologies. Stage 2 is when they converge.
Supply chain, the personal, automated, and local supply chain. And I think actually what we're at the moment is the stage where all of the inventions are there to automate and create a new, more local, more personalized model for the supply chain. What has to happen is for the investment, and certainly the legislation as well, to enable that to happen.
I had an interesting conversation at coffee earlier with another gentleman who's in the audience from the UK, and we were talking about a big infrastructure project that's taking place in the United Kingdom at the moment called HS2, High Speed 2, and they've been talking about this for about a decade. Hasn't started yet. They've been doing the land acquisitions and doing discussions about that. And at the same time this week there was an announcement of the Hyperloop, if you're familiar with the Hyperloop development between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So that technology, this train technology that we've been talking about for a decade and installing this high-speed train, effectively that technology is out of date. A new way of moving people across distances at speed is being developed. So big companies, been governments, you know, developing infrastructures that are effectively 20th century technology, when in fact there's 21st century technology out there. But the planning processes and all the other things around that take so long that ultimately companies are not able, and countries in this case, are not able to take advantage of that.
So if you imagine, if I'm competing against Amazon, and Amazon has autonomous vehicles that don't involve any drivers, has either drones or the Starship Robotics, has robot warehouses, has artificial intelligence doing all the planning. And I need human drivers that only drive 8 hours a day before they have to take a rest because they're on a tachometer. I need human pickers, human packers, human loaders, human delivery drivers, my costs, my risks, my taxation bill, everything is far greater than Amazon. So I'm not playing the same game. So I've got two choices: play a different game or play their game.
It is impossible for humans to consume the amount of knowledge that we're currently generating. So artificial intelligence is doing it. It's making connections where we simply can't. And basically, it's better at it than us. The trouble with values is, whose values? ISIS, their values? Fundamental Christians in their values? Who decides what values are the values we want to program into the system, and how do we know that it might not decide its own set of values?
So, is it great to create machines that are smarter than us? Because the smartest thing on the planet always seems to be the one that wins. What happens when we're not the smartest?
As I said, if you're not part of the creation, you'll be part of the destruction. And unfortunately, certainly some of the 3PL companies will, a lot of the business goes through Amazon right now. It won't. And Amazon will find they'll become from their customer to their competitor. And they have to adapt.
So what to do? Well, the global supply chain is still a human supply chain. For now. Because we're at the transition point. And we're not just at the transition point of another wave. I believe we're at the transition point of a mega wave, which was started with the first industrial revolution, and this is the end of the industrial age, and we are now at the transition point of a new age.
one of the things that have come from technology is the democratization of innovation. Anyone can innovate. We don't need massive capital expenditures, but also the democratization of education. So now an African living in a village with the access to the internet could learn medicine, could learn psychology, could learn anything, because the entirety of world knowledge is contained, on something he's got in his pocket. So when you have access to the knowledge, it comes down to your mindset. What do you want to do with this information? Do you want to play Candy Crush all day? Or do you want to, teach yourself? I think if all you have to trade is the things that on the end of your wrists, then the future's not looking particularly bright for you. And the question, therefore, is what do we do with the people who have very limited skill sets and actually very limited aspirations? So the problem is not so much not having a lot of skills, but maybe not having the willingness to learn new skills. I follow this incredibly closely, and I veer between excitement and depression. Excitement at the rate of technological change, and depression because I can't keep up with the rate of technological change. You made a statement at the start there that robots are going to do the things that robots are told to do. That is changing dramatically. Things like machine learning is the concept of being able to, effectively a form of artificial intelligence to be able to reach its own results without being explicitly programmed to do so. So this is computers figuring out things for itself. What used to be the case was that companies and people would look for business strategies and opportunities, and maybe if they're really good, they would disrupt an industry. What's happening right now is disruption is the strategy. And certainly at Silicon Valley, there are 25-year-olds that are just looking for things to disrupt.
It is very interesting. And I think the big impact of all this technology, like I say, is interesting. But it's the effect and the impact technology has on society and the economy that's going to be really disruptive moving forward. Countries that create societies that allow autonomous vehicles, that allow robotics, that allow all of these things to take place, will be able to manufacture and move stuff at such a lower unit cost than those countries that do not, that it will put enormous pressure on them to compete. But maybe, just maybe, their society isn't set up for that. Maybe their roads are not set up for that. So suddenly, the emerging nations particularly will struggle because actually, now we've got things that are operating at the cost of electricity. We're starting to think about all the manufacturing, everything moved back to, effectively, the sort of heartlands. Manufacturing comes home. It's basically creating a society where people just have a guaranteed amount of money that enables them to become consumers. Because as the marginal cost of everything reduces, things will become much more affordable. But what we need to give them is disposable income. And what they're actually saying is, rather than sort of means-tested benefits, and they've tried this in places like Canada, let's just give people a set amount of money that allows them to become consumers. Because if they don't, capitalism falls. The model breaks. It's no good having great corporations building stuff that no one can afford to buy. If you ban the printing press, for example, then suddenly the sharing of ideas didn't happen. That happened elsewhere. So that was why the societies over in the Western Europe suddenly advanced, because they were capturing ideas, they were sharing ideas, they were printing books. And over in the Ottoman Empire, they didn't do that. That stopped. There was a ban on the diffusion of ideas, and the balance changed. China was the most culturally advanced nation in the world until it decided it had nothing to learn from outside. And it closed its borders moving forwards. And it will change. This will be the last wave. Capitalism in its current form will not be able to continue by about 2040, 2045. It will have to change. It will probably change to an automated version of socialism. We will be giving people money to just become consumers. Products will be digital more than they will be physical. 3D printers will probably be something you have in the home in the same way as you have a normal printer in your home now. The manufacturing's coming home. The jobs aren't. And companies, therefore, need to adapt, because if you don't become part of the creation, you sure as hell will be part of the destruction. Companies with their hierarchical command and control business model, are going to struggle. Existing assets are not going to be worth as much as you think they are. They're going to be rendered obsolete. Technology is going to undermine the advantages as well. Small upstarts will suddenly come along and take your business away. Labor costs are going to become a less relevant part of the manufacturing equation. So therefore, companies need to develop complex, adaptive, agile, anticipatory systems, and they need to think and work differently together.